Good evening and welcome to the South African of the Year Daily Show here on ANN7. My name is Maps Maponyane. This, of course, is the show where we profile extraordinary and inspiring South Africans doing incredible things around the country through the lens this year of reflection and progression.
Most definitely. And if you want to know how you can vote for your favorite nominees in their various categories, just go to our website, sati2016.com. Joining us today on the show, we have Conservationist of the Year nominee, Agnes Maluleke, whose project, of course, the Johannesburg Wild Dogs Project, has been nominated. She's also a curator carnivores. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that how I say it? Welcome to the show, Agnes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us. Shall we start at the very beginning? You know, there's always a confusion, I think, for a lot of people between the difference between a wild dog and a hyena. What's the simplest way to understand?
Okay, hyenas are quite different from wild dogs. Although we have 3 different species of hyenas, we have spotted hyenas, brown hyenas, and striped hyenas. So they all are having different kind of color patterns on them, and not very close to the wild dogs. The wild dogs have brown, orange, and black colors, and it differs from one wild dog to another. Whereas you have spotted hyenas with light brown color with black spots on them. You have brown hyenas that have the edges of their hair, it looks more brown. So it makes the whole animal look brown. And striped hyenas, obviously, they have stripes.
Similar but not the same.
Yes. And if you look at the back of the wild dogs, they actually more like a normal dog at home. Okay. It's actually nice and flat, but the hyenas is more curved backwards.
Yeah, that's the simplest way I think I'd remember it. Because looking at the colors and the spots, I'd be like,
You just gotta remember the stripes, the spots.
Nah, the back works. It's either straight or it's curved.
For those who don't know back at home, how serious is or how paramount is the conservation of these wild dogs, and why is it so important for us?
The wild dogs are now endangered species, so basically there's only few of them left in the wild. So that's where we come in as the zoo. We want to conserve the species to ensure that our great-grandchildren can still see the species, not the pictures of the species. So we have decided to take a stand and say, let us try to protect the species. Let us try to conserve the species. We brought these animals into the zoo. We're breeding them. And the intention is we're going to be reintroducing them back to the wild where they should be.
Yeah.
What has led to the decline of wild dogs? Is there a certain need for them? Has there just been a lack of breeding between them? What's been happening?
There's a lot of things that have contributed to the decline of wild dogs in the wild. You have a lot of farmers out there, when they see the wild dogs, they see something that is going to kill their livestock, and they have invested a lot into their livestock. So they actually kill them on first sight. And you have your reserves, and next to the reserves, you'll have the community living around the reserves. And sometimes these animals do escape from the reserves, and they find themselves in the community, in conflict with the community, because now the community still has the same mindset as the farmer. They have invested in their livestock. For them to protect their livestock, they have to kill these animals. But in actual fact, there is no need for that, because you can actually secure your livestock so that even if these animals come out of the reserve to your livestock, they're not going to have contact with your livestock, so they won't kill your livestock. So I think it's all about education.
That's exactly what I was about to say. And it's on platforms such as these that we are able to have those conversations and educate one another. So Zuno, though, let's go have a look and see what a day in the life of this project looks like. We joined Agnes at the zoo.
My name is Agnes Maluleke. I am a curator of carnivores at Johannesburg City Parks and Zoo. Amongst the animals that I look after is the wild dogs, which are very close to my heart. I've got a national diploma in nature conservation, which is what got me into the zoo. And when I got here, I realized that for me to conserve any kind of animal properly is for me to understand the habitat where these animals come from. I am managing the wild dog project, wild dog conservation project, which is one of the most important projects for Johannesburg City Parks and Zoo. The wild dogs are endangered carnivores. It's actually one of the species that is actually not getting good attention out there from the public because they are prosecuted for the wrong reasons. They are accused of doing things that they're not doing. So hence, over the years, we have seen population decline of the wild dogs. So we are trying to increase the number of wild dogs for future generations. We cannot separate conservation from people. And for us to conserve these animals properly, we need to educate the people living around the reserves and the national parks. So what is happening is that they sometimes go out of the boundaries of those national parks and the reserves. And when they go out of those boundaries of the reserves and national parks, then they get killed because everyone who sees them sees a meat-eating animal. If they haven't seen an animal that was killed a couple of days ago, then they're thinking, this is definitely going to come and kill my livestock. Ecosystem works in this way. You have your sunlight, and then it shines on the plants grow, and you have those animals that eat those plants. And then you have carnivores that eat those animals that eat plants. So if you eliminate one from the ecosystem, there will be an imbalance. With all the animals that you see in the zoo, when they come in, we take them to the hospital to quarantine for 30 days period. So we get in them, most of them, they used to being in a large space, and suddenly they're going to be in a smaller space in the zoo. So when we take them to the hospital, they now get into adapt to living in a smaller space, and the vets will check if they are fine, and some come with ticks, and we make sure that they're not going to introduce the ticks into the zoo. So after 30 days, then we bring them to the section. For people out there who are owning livestock, it will be the farmers and the communities living around the reserves and the national parks. We need your assistance in saving the wild dogs. You're not going to have to kill it because it has killed your livestock, and in turn, you will be contributing to the conservation of these endangered species.
You're watching the South African of the Year TV show. This is where we get to know our nominees a little bit better. They're all the awesome people that are doing just amazing things in all their different walks of life. And today we're joined by one of our nominees in the Conservationist of the Year category, Mayor Agnes Maluleke. Or kero OC. Ne, because Mayor sounds so official. Can I call you Os Agnes? Only flying out. So Os Agnes, we had a look at what a typical day in your life looks like. Let's talk about some of the challenges of this project, because it can't always be easy sailing, whether it's from a funds point of view or just day-to-day running. What are some of those challenges that your project encounters?
Okay, the biggest challenge that we have is that our wild dogs enclosure is close to the zoo perimeter fence, and we have a lot of public members walking their dogs around that area.
Oh.
So from time to time, they pick up parasites from the dogs that are walked along that area, and we're going to have to treat the wild dogs. So you'll have things like, wild dogs losing their hair, and they have to be on a treatment for a very long time to recover from that. But the reason why we have them in that area is because the public members can only view them in one side, because we want less disturbance as possible from their den, because the den is actually located at the back, which is far away from the public members. And another challenge that we have is these are captive born animals. The question is, will they make it when they go back to the wild? And are they going to be safe where they're going to be? Because we're still in the initial stage of the project. We haven't released any at the moment. And it keeps on ringing into our heads. Is this going to work? But I mean, we're there every day. We want to make it work. So whatever challenges they are, we are going to make sure that we find a way to overcome those.
I love that.
Sadly, with the issue of conservation, there's always a few animals that are endangered and are struggling in the wild somehow in terms of their numbers. How do you even track the population numbers of wild dogs? Because unlike a rhino or an elephant, it's easy to see when there's a decline. But with wild dogs, which are a lot smaller and roam around all over, how do you track the population numbers around the wild to see the decline?
It's actually quite interesting. We have our colleagues working in the wild out there, in the reserves, in the national parks. They do census every year. So in as much as it's not accurate, like say with the rhinos, you can never say, I'm 100% sure I've got 500 rhinos in the reserves. You're more likely to have missed something during the census. So the same thing applies to the wild dogs. I would say that is a very close estimation of the number that is there in the wild.
And speaking of close, how close do you get to the wild dogs yourself?
I actually get very close to them, but the wild dogs, they quite interesting species, because I'm a bit short as compared to my team, and they pick it up. Immediately I go into the enclosure, they start informing each other that, hey, look, the prey is here. You hear the call is actually like different. Then I just know I shouldn't be here. Then I have to walk out.
Wow.
So
small people like you and I should not be in the enclosure. We can send maps in.
They kind of have respect for tall people. I think it's because they associate short people with prey. So it's like the food is coming in. And so because we have learned the behavior of these animals, you kind of know those warning calls that you shouldn't get too close. Because if anything, they're just going to bite a chunk of your muscle. So you surely don't want to do that.
Besides, of course, the wild dogs in the wild, we need to look after all the animals in the wild, especially to maintain a fair ecological balance out there in the environment. And to support people such as my Agnes, please can you go to saty2016.com to vote for her as one of the conservationists of the year.
Welcome back. You're still with us here on ANN7, watching the South African of the Year TV show. Of course, counting down to that glamorous, prestigious event happening in November. And of course, you can win yourself tickets to the event for a VIP experience. We'll let you know later on how you can enter that. Right now in the studio, we're sitting with Agnes Maluleke, who is from the Joburg Zoo. She is the manager of the Wild Dogs Project. She's been telling us a little bit about the animals. We've gotten to know exactly what they're all about, that they're dangerous at times, but I suppose they're also nice at times, especially when it comes to treat time. Let's have a look at Agnes and the treats happening with the dogs.
We focus on stimulating the animals physically and mentally. So it's not only focused on one thing. So what we do is we will make frozen treats. You know, when it's a hot day like this, so you would need an ice lolly or an ice cream, so to say. My decision of using the mince is because as it mixes and during the freezing period, it distributes equally inside the treat. So they don't only cut open that ice to get a specific thing. They end up eating the whole thing because it's not just water, it's water mixed with meat, and that is frozen. It keeps them entertained for a longer period.
Work that is definitely not for the faint-hearted. My Agnes, you are very fearless, apparently, from the footage we just saw. I really wanted to know how much goes into taming and mating and grooming those hyenas in captivity. You told us about the close calls, but in terms of just the effort that you need to put in and the amount of work around a project like that, what goes into that?
There's actually a lot of work that goes into that. We have people that are, the team that is dedicated to making sure that everything goes well. So you first have to check if the fence is still intact, because otherwise if these animals escape, they will cause a lot of damage, especially at night. So you have to check if the fence is actually in a good condition, and the animals are also in a good condition. Are they getting the right diet? Are they getting the medical treatment that they should be getting? And is the enclosure cleaned as it's supposed to? Are they getting fresh drinking water every day? And during the breeding season, it's even more intense, because we encourage them to dig the den themselves where they're going to have the babies. And breeding is normally in rainy season. So sometimes when it rains and there's babies inside the den, you can't sleep at night because you're thinking maybe the den is flooded and the babies drown, and you don't want that. So you kind of try to manipulate the whole environment from outside, because you still don't want to disturb the animals. So you have to redirect the water to another direction, and you have to monitor them very closely, because when they are stressed, you can easily pick it up, because we work with them every day. So we know when they're happy and when they're not happy and they're stressing.
Becomes second nature to you.
Yes.
Agnes, you speak about working with a team, and from what you're saying, I gauge that it's a job that has a lot of love. You really cannot do it if your whole heart and soul is not in it. It's a strange career that you've picked out for yourself, especially for Motomunsu. Going into conservation is not something that we necessarily venture into. How did you stumble upon this, before you got to the wild dogs? Because it's interesting to know where your story began.
Actually, point of correction. We as Black people, we are born conservators. We have livestock at home, especially in rural areas. We have community grazing land. And we have wild animals living in those areas. And if you think about it, you have each and every surname, they protect certain species.
That's true.
It's our way of conserving these animals. Although in the Western culture it will be a different thing. So I think we're born conservators. We actually raised to understand conservation, but in a different way. So for me, I learned to be a conservator from childhood. And I also looked after the livestock of my parents and my grandparents. I actually used to follow my grandfather when he's feeding his goats and changing water and cleaning. I would ask lots of questions. He actually loved nature so much. And then I knew back then that, it's either I'm going to work with plants or I'm going to work with animals. But I loved plants more than animals. But then I ended up in the zoo, and I am making the most of it every day.
You just put that so beautifully, that we are, it's in us, it's within us, it's something that we're born to do.
How big is the team? Because obviously this would require quite a few people in the staff to be able to conduct such a project.
With the wild dogs, it's only 4 people involved, but I've got a team of 8 people. Because I'm not only looking after the wild dogs, I've got other animals that I'm taking care of, like your tigers, your lions, your hyenas and cheetahs. So we've got quite a big collection of carnivores.
Yeah.
Well, just as my Agnes and her team gets to spend a lot of the time with the wild dogs, we got the chance to spend some time with her team. Let's have a look.
We have a meeting every morning. We discuss the different responsibilities everyone has. Then we load the food. Then we go off to the sections. I get there, lock them in, and then feed them. I feed, clean. When they get sick, I'm the first to notice. Then I will tell Victor, the zookeeper, who then will further inspect.
We as the keepers and all of the management in the zoo, we have an expertise and the knowledge how to breed the wild dogs in a captive environment. It's very important for us to breed them here in the natural environment, in a captive environment, and then what we do in the future, we get expertise for the people that can able to do reintroduction of those wild dogs in the natural environment.
The work being done by the Johannesburg Zoo is just amazing with the Wild Dogs Project. And of course, you can always visit the zoo. They are open, I think, like 7 days a week. So please do go out there and visit the Wild Dogs because you heard about them here, okay? And if you want to vote for the project as the Conservationist of the Year project that walks away with the award, head over to our website, sati2016.com. And by doing so, you'll just follow all the instructions. You stand a chance to win a VIP experience to the Sati Awards happening in November. We'll be right back still with Agnes.
Welcome back. You're watching the South African of the Year TV show here on ANN7. And in this episode, we're talking conservation and, well, conservation as a whole. Yeah. But the Conservationist of the Year category is what we're focusing on with the Johannesburg Zoo Wild Dog Project. And we have in studio my Agnes Maluleka. And we want to know what your South African trivia and general knowledge is like. How good's your knowledge?
I think fairly good.
We're going to give you 5 questions around what we think you might know, but they're going to be a little bit challenging. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, question number 1. Which animal do we find on the South African 20 Rand note?
So it's still a bit of you, but it's a twist.
Yeah.
You definitely have them at the Joburg Zoo. They're big.
It's always funny when we get to these questions because people know it. They've seen it so many times, but
it's going to come in front of you. Shall we set you free?
Yeah, please.
It's the elephant.
It's the elephant.
Oh my God.
The elephant. All right, 0 out of 1 so far. We've got 5 to go.
All right, so in South Africa, there are 18,000, or there are more than 18,000 vascular plants. What percentage of those are indigenous to South Africa?
You're talking about plants.
Yes, what you loved more at a stage.
I think you're going to have to take a guess with this one, girl. We'll give it to you if it's within the region.
I think I will take a guess because there's a lot of plants that are discovered in a daily basis in South Africa. So you said just how many?
What's the percentage?
Of the
18,000 of the vascular plant species in South Africa?
That's a hard question. Okay, I'm going to give you...
That's a very tricky one.
Would you say 50% or 80%?
I think we should be around 60%.
But we gave you two options.
I
You got to
tried
pick one
to
of
help
them.
you. I tried.
50 or 80? We have to move on quickly.
The
so
answer was
you need to answer.
80%.
80%.
At least you learned something new today. We taught you something new today. We schooled you, girl. Okay, here's an easy one. South Africa has the biggest man-made hole in the world. Where is it situated?
Man-made hole.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
The diamonds are there. All that bling.
Kimberley.
Yeah! You're even unsure because you're on the spot. How many official languages are there in South Africa?
11.
There we go.
And the last one, what is the title of the South African national anthem? Go for it.
You know it.
Yeah, you know it.
Okay.
Just what?
Because I missed so many questions. It makes me feel unsure of myself.
No.
So what's the title of the
what is
national
the
anthem?
And Kosisikele.
There we go.
Thank you. 3 out of 5. Not bad, Agnes. We weren't trying to catch you out, girl. We're just trying to, spice it up a little bit. Spice it up a little bit. But as we wrap up our interview, conservation is really, it's a career that it takes heart. It takes a lot of work. What would you say your message is to your fellow nominees in the same category as you about just staying the road, Unzima, but how do we keep going on as conservationists in our country?
I would say to all the nominees and those who are not nominated and are involved in conservation in one way or another, we are all winners. Without us, a lot of animals and plants will go extinct. So we are doing a very good job. So do not ever doubt what you do and keep working hard and keep spreading the message, because alone we cannot conserve these animals. We need everyone out there to come together and we can conserve each and every little thing out there together.
I love it.
And that's such a great message, because people always think that without an entire massive group of people, they won't be able to save the environment and conserve and protect our animals. But all it takes is everyone to just contribute a little bit of their time, of their efforts, and a bit of passion and love obviously goes a long way too, like you've been putting in with your team. And I think that's very, very important, and we really appreciate the work that you put in. Hopefully from this show will yield a few young conservationists coming through the ranks,
yes,
that you'll be interviewing on their levels of fear of walking into a cage. But just out of their passion and love for the work. Thank you very much for your time.
And most importantly, we
very
applaud you as well, Agnes. I think that's important to say. We see the work that you're doing and keep on doing it, that you have been with us on the show today. I hope that you've learned a lot. I definitely learned a lot about wild dogs. The fact that short people should stay away from the enclosure. Because why? We look like prey. So from myself, and myself, Maps Mapunyani.